Hour number 3. Welcome to it live right here on this Tuesday on the early line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. I am Ben Stevens. He is Donnie Rightside. So much to get to here in our third and final hour up until 11 a.m. Eastern. A lot of hardwood handicaps coming your way around the association and a monumental night, a Super Tuesday in college basketball and a really big week of college hoops. This weekend, for instance, Donnie, in college basketball, following the release of the new AP Top 25 yesterday afternoon, we have 5 ranked versus ranked men's college basketball games at the Division I level, 4 inside the AP Top 10, 3 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday. I'll see you at the sports book out in Las Vegas for some brunch and basketball on Sunday between number 2 Purdue and number 6 Wisconsin in Madison.
By the way, you take a look at college basketball as a season, right? As you know me, I like to mock that silly season. Football's in full swing, college football playoffs and all that, get through it. But now as we get into conference basketball, it's exciting times. But also keep in mind, forget about the tournament itself at the end of it all, and the ends of early April. In about 5 weeks, we get into conference tournament championship week here, which is phenomenal, right all the way down to the Southland Conference, all the way up through the big schools like the Big 12, the SEC, and the ACC. We're not far away from kicking everything off, because I think everybody tends to look back at, right, say, well, March 17th, I believe, is Selection Sunday. That's when the tournament begins. No, 2 weeks before that, those conference championships start to kick off, and that's when it really gets interesting. We're not that far away. By the way, February, shortest month of the year here, we're really close to that now. So let's go.
There's 2 more days in January. Then we get into February, and then we get into March, when the madness intensifies in college basketball. Let's make sure we welcome in our SportsGrid radio audience here. Our third and final hour live on this Tuesday on the early line. Sirius XM, channel 159. All of our radio terrestrial affiliates now in the fold as well. He is Donnie. I am Ben. College basketball in full effect. The NBA season already past the midway point in 2023-24. And last night, Donnie, one of my favorite storylines coming to a head in Oklahoma City. We know about the favorites in the Western Conference, the reigning champs, the Nuggets, the Phoenix Suns, the LA Clippers, who are 22-5 straight up since the end of November. But 2 of the top 3 teams in the Western Conference, and they entered last night tied for the best mark out west. The Oklahoma City Thunder, the Minnesota Timberwolves. The T-Wolves won outright as a 2.5-point road dog in OKC. They are now 33-14, the best record all by their lonesome atop the Western Conference. A half game in front of Denver, a full game currently in front of OKC. And we asked the public to end out our second hour of these 2 up-and-coming teams in the Western Conference, who has the best chance of winning a conference title out west this year. And the public, 56% of the public backing Minnesota.
Yeah, and I do think that's right now, right? If you're taking a look at, obviously Edwards is a wonderful player. He's still young in his career, but there's a lot of really good veterans on that basketball team that are ready to take the next level. When we talk about being defensive, the game changes in the playoffs, Ben, as we know. You don't get a lot of 151 to 147 games in the playoffs because every possession means a lot, which includes getting out early on those fast breaks, selling into playing in the half court. You take a look at the opponent's points per game, only 107 here for the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's going to play out and be a factor come playoff time. Yes, they have a 1-game lead over OKC. Yes, OKC could still overtake them the rest of the way. But if I'm looking from a playoff predicament here, I love OKC. I love the future for OKC. I just don't know if their time is now. I just think Minnesota Timberwolves are a more ready team to win in the playoffs than OKC, Ben, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get it. Minnesota has a little bit more postseason pedigree than Oklahoma City. Neither team has gone on a large run with this current roster, this current core as of late. Oklahoma City, an up-and-coming team to be where they are already, really speaks to the lengths of what that young roster has been accomplishing out in OKC. The Timberwolves are propelled by Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert into the fold the last 2 years, and Karl Anthony Towns. Minnesota was the 8th seed a season ago. They got bounced in 5 games in the opening round of the NBA playoffs against the Denver Nuggets. As we look at the Western Conference odds, I mentioned I wanted to bring up the odds correlation to this poll. Out west, Oklahoma City actually has a better price to win the conference championship than Minnesota. 9-1 for OKC, 10-1 for the T-Wolves, fourth and fifth best numbers, respectively. But when you look at the NBA championship odds, Minnesota at an 18-1 number has a better price than Oklahoma City by a full buck at 19-1. How do you make sense of that odds distinction that we now have updated the FanDuel Sportsbook?
Yeah, I don't really think there's a ton of correlation in that there, Ben. Maybe just getting an extra couple wagers here on Minnesota as opposed to Oklahoma City. But they are close and relatively, obviously, so close in the standings that I do think it does make some sense here. But I'm not going to put anything above that between an 18-1 and a 19-1, other than just some of the bet swings that are coming in here to set that market up here. But if I was the betting public, which I am, I would be betting more on the Minnesota Timberwolves and that price at 18-1 than I would at 19-1 for OKC at the FanDuel Sportsbook.
So, of course, Donnie, when we look at the Western Conference odds once again, and as we have spoken at length about how the structure of the NBA playoffs works, you need to be one of the top 10 teams to have a shot of even getting into the postseason, courtesy of the play-in tournament, that you can be a team that is seeded to go on the road in your first series. Like the Golden State Warriors right now would be outside the play-in tournament, even on their way looking in. But if Golden State makes a run in the second half and they earn the 9 spot and are a play-in tournament team, they'd probably be favored to get into the postseason, to be one of the final 8. You can make a run. Now, there might be value, or you might like Minnesota more than Oklahoma City. Do you think either the Timberwolves or the Thunder this year in 2023-24 could unseat a Phoenix, a Denver, a Los Angeles, that being the Clippers in this instance?
No, I don't. And by the way, it's not fair to those basketball teams like Minnesota and OKC because they're playing such great basketball here over the first half of the season. But the end game is, well, we know what the NBA teams like to do. Like if there's a chance with, 2 weeks left in the season, like, hey, Phoenix, if you play every single game, you can move up a spot. They're like, no. We're going to rest our guys and get ready. Whether we get the 3 or the 4, there's no bearing on this. And the reason I bring that up is Minnesota and OKC are learning how to win, so every game counts, but you don't get that, or should I say, you get a discount here entering into the playoffs with those two teams in Minnesota and OKC. Because why? We haven't seen them done it in the playoffs. They don't have superstars that you can stand on and say, look at that guy. He's dominated in the playoffs before, and that's why heading into it, there's going to be a lot of doubt between those two teams and not necessarily warranted, Ben.
Yeah, not necessarily, but again, that's what they have to get past, and the odds makers reflect that there. A little bit of market movement, OKC 9-1, Minnesota 10-1, but still trail the big 3 from the odds perspective out west. Craig Mish joins the show up next.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
Right now, he's a little bit more over money, but he's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Chargers have the 5th pick in the National Football League draft. There's a lot of different roads that they could take with this pick. And for the record as well, there's a few sports books out there already that already have next year's Super Bowl numbers up. The Chargers are like 30-1. So there's a lot of work to do.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
He feels like he's got unfinished business, right? He won the national championship, did what he said he wanted to do, going back to Ann Arbor.
And, he coached, I think, with the Raiders as an assistant, and then got the job with the Niners, and then went to title games, went to Super Bowls, lost to his brother. And I think you're right, unfinished business, go back, try to win a Super Bowl.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the RAC. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like, OKC just rolling into Detroit, going, like, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We are live right here on this Tuesday on the Early Line. It's Ben Stevens. It's Donnie right side. The man in the middle is Craig Mish, the host of Newswire that starts in a little bit less than 50 minutes at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, live right here on SportsGrid. Joins us now. Craig, Super Bowl 58 is set. It's the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. A rematch of Super Bowl 54. And Craig, all week long, entering conference championship weekend, the people, the public told us they wanted some fresh faces. They wanted some new blood. They wanted the Ravens or the Lions. Are you happy to see this Super Bowl rematch in Las Vegas?
Yeah, look, I think when you get to this point in the season, for me, it doesn't matter. We're all going to watch the Super Bowl no matter what. This is the one true event in the United States that you could have had, the Lions and the Bengals playing in the Super Bowl, and people would say, oh, no one's going to watch it. The ratings are going to be down. We know that's not the case. This is the outlier of all events. So for me, the fact that we go year after year, guys, and in recent history, I don't know how far we got to go back here now, but it feels like the last several Super Bowls have been sort of pick'ems or -2s or -3s. And so we anticipate getting a game where money is going to come in on both sides. We really don't know who's going to win. And we anticipate a close game in the end. So for me, that's all I can ask for on my Super Bowl Sunday.
Very valid there. And by the way, you are right about this in Major League Baseball, Craig, because when the Phillies got knocked out against Arizona, even the Arizona fans were upset that the Phillies weren't in the World Series. Therefore, nobody watched. But obviously, everything is going to be watched here on Super Bowl Sunday coming up in 2 weeks. But let's take a look at how we actually got there. The Ravens and the Chiefs, 17-10 final. I came away with this football game, and the Chiefs only scored 17 points. And I'd say, Craig, you know what? If Patrick Mahomes is in a football game, it's either you bet him or you pass on the football game. What were your thoughts coming out of that Chiefs-Ravens game?
I'm on the other side of the way that a lot of people saw this game. Mahomes made an incredible pass to clinch the game, to throw to MVS, and he also had a great first half. But listen, I'm not taking anything away from Patrick Mahomes. He's great. He's probably going to end up being the greatest of all time. When he's on the team, you have a chance to win. But for me, I don't think he won the game for the Chiefs. I think the defense of the Chiefs ended up winning the game. And if the Ravens don't make mistakes, I think they may have been able to win this game. The Chiefs seem to be playing the same blueprint all season, which is essentially scoring 2 touchdowns a game, letting their defense play, letting Spagnuolo game plan against the opposite side. And that, to me, is what's carried them here. And I think that is what's going to have to happen for them to beat the 49ers in the Super Bowl. So, I see a lot of people saying, oh, I'm never going to bet against Mahomes. I'm never going to. You really, it's okay to do that. And in people who bet against Mahomes, he has lost Super Bowls before. He has lost games before, too. To me, the astonishing part is just seeing how the defense of the Chiefs has transformed over the last couple of years, where they needed to score 5-6 touchdowns a game. And look, they may need to do that against San Francisco too in the Super Bowl. But that to me was my takeaway from that, was punching the ball out of Zay Flowers, catching an interception, still got to catch the ball in the end zone, mistakes by the Ravens, give credit to the Chiefs, but the defense of the Chiefs is the reason they're there.
Yeah, the Chiefs now the best scoring defense in the National Football League, second best throughout the regular season, and a scoring offense under Mahomes that has not been at the level of offensive success we have seen the last 5 years in Kansas City. But it seems as though they have found their groove, and in significant moments, 30 of 31, 241 yards, Patrick Mahomes always delivers. But I would agree, the defense, and Steve Spagnuolo might be the KC team MVP in 2023. For Lamar Jackson, though, now 2-4 in his playoff career, and on the biggest stage in his first ever AFC Championship game appearance, Craig, flat out disappointing on Sunday. Multiple turnovers, a very costly interception on the Ravens' final true offensive possession of that football game. When you look at Lamar, obviously the narrative is always going to follow the quarterback position in the National Football League. Now just 2-4 in his playoff career. Do you think that narrative grows after what was a successful 2023, but a disappointing end in the postseason?
Yeah, I think it has to. And look, that's just the nature of this business. It's the nature of playing the toughest position in sports at quarterback. And Lamar's going to win another MVP. And the season's going to feel empty because they didn't end up even going to the Super Bowl. I think that's like the next thing, is he's at least got to get there. But what really catches my eye and caught my eye in this game with Lamar is I looked at the player prop before the game on Lamar Jackson, and his rushing total on FanDuel was 63.5. And I said to myself, all right, well, look, if he goes over this total, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens are probably going to win. Like, he's going to have one of those 100-yard rushing games, 10 carries, 15 carries. Look, I know it bothers a lot of people that Gus Edwards didn't run more and Justice Hill didn't run more. You know what bothered me, guys? That he only had 50 yards rushing. And in watching the game, maybe I don't understand football, but it seemed to me like several times in that game there was wide open field where he just was taking forever and then chucking it up for an incomplete pass. So, that's what separates him from everybody else in the NFL, and he didn't use that for some reason in that game to get first downs, to get extra yards. So sort of perplexing. During the regular season, I get it. You want to have him around for the Super Bowl. But to me, would it have shocked anybody for Lamar to rush 9-10 times for 140 yards and he's lifting that trophy and that's the reason why they won? That's the way I thought that was going to go down, and they didn't even try. So I don't know why.
No, you're right about that, too, because Willie Gay Jr., also the spy linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs, missed that football game with a neck injury. So the field should have been wide open, and he certainly didn't take advantage of that. Just a tough scene all the way around for the Baltimore Ravens. NFC Championship game on the West Coast saw the 49ers, 34 points, the Detroit Lions, 31 points, moving on to the Super Bowl. But this was a tale of two halves, 24-7 at the break, then 27-7 in the second half in favor of the 49ers as they move on to the Super Bowl. Craig, what did you see in this game? And a lot of questionable decisions there out of Dan Campbell.
Yeah, so look, doing the research on it now, you're never going to hear the head coach of a team come out and say that we don't have confidence in a player. It just generally doesn't happen in sports, and when it does, we're talking about it on shows like this. So you're never going to hear Dan Campbell come out and say, hey, look, this is the way, this is what he does say. We play aggressive. This is the way we play. We hit 80% of those plays all season long, 4th and 2, 4th and 3. That's what he is going to say. Now, here's what I'm going to say. Obviously, going in, I had no idea that Michael Badgley had only made 35% of those kicks in the last 5 years from that distance. Obviously, I did not know that Michael Badgley has been 50% from 45 and up over the course of his career. So, guys, let's be clear. He did not have confidence that guy was going to make that kick. I mean, I think that's more of the reason. I think that if he had the old Jason Hansen there, or if he had Tucker, or if he had Vinatieri, like Belichick was kicking Vinatieri to win games, I think you would have seen a field goal attempt there. I genuinely don't think he had confidence that he was going to make that kick in the end, and he was going to go down swinging with what's worked for him in the regular season. So sometimes we don't really know the stats going in, and you're never going to hear that said publicly. But my opinion is Dan Campbell looked at it, looked at the numbers, and somebody upstairs said, yo, this guy's only hitting 35% of kicks from 45 and up over the last few years. Well, what are we doing here? The odds are against us. Play the odds. And that's what he did.
The first kick would have been about 45 yards, the second 47 or 48 yards. Michael Badgley only played in 6 games with the Lions throughout this 2023 season, 4 to end out the regular season, 2 in the playoffs. Did attempt 2 kicks from 40-plus yards and did succeed in both. Craig, only about 45 seconds left in this segment. Super Bowl 58 is set. The Niners, a very slight 1.5 favorite against the Chiefs. What is your early thought for Super Bowl 58?
Yeah, the way that it feels for me is I'm probably going to stay away from the side and focus on the total here. And it does seem to me like, I don't, do you guys feel, in watching these games, didn't it feel like the refs weren't calling anything this weekend in the playoffs? And I think that could continue in the Super Bowl. So first half over, second half over, game over. Those are sort of the things that I'm thinking. I didn't even remember the refs making many calls in those outside of the personal foul calls, which were obvious. But beyond that, interesting note, I thought.
Craig Mish, normally an under better, an over in a Super Bowl. We shall see. More on the early line next.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev. Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
Right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I don't
favorite.
care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Chargers have the 5th pick in the National Football League draft. There's a lot of different like roads that they could take with this pick. And for the record as well, there's a few sports books out there already that already have next year's Super Bowl numbers up. The Chargers are like 30-1. So there's a lot of work to do.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
He feels like he's got unfinished business, right? He won the national championship, did what he said he wanted to do going back to Ann Arbor.
And, he coached, I think, with the Raiders as an assistant and then got the job with the Niners and then went to title games, went to Super Bowls, lost to his brother. And I think you're right, unfinished business, go back, try to win a Super Bowl.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the RAC. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
You are with the two premier NBA handicappers on this SportsGrid network. It's me, Ben Stevens, and that other guy, Donnie right side, to get you set for a night around the association. 12 games yesterday, a ton of action in the association on this Tuesday as well. Donnie, we have reached an interesting stage of this NBA season, past the midway point, as we have shared multiple times. But for the best and the brightest in the NBA, if you keep missing games, you're not going to be in consideration for NBA awards this year or all-pro NBA teams, which come with hefty contract incentives as well. And we might see that in a spot tonight in Boston, where the Celtics are a 7-point home favorite against the Indiana Pacers. Tyrese Halliburton only has 3 games of wiggle room to work with for him to reach that 65-game minimum around the association this year. He has missed a ton of games, but expected to make his return tonight. He has a points prop listed at 20.5, a 7-point number in favor of the Celtics, who did win last night, Donnie, at home. This is the second leg of a back-to-back against the New Orleans Pelicans. They won by 6, did not cover as an 8.5-point favorite, but Boston at home, the best in the NBA, 21-2 straight up now.
Yeah, almost losing, by the way, 3 straight home games, which is really interesting. And they pulled that one out against the Pelicans. Also, no Kristaps Porzingis last night. I do see him in the anticipated starting lineup tonight. So it's one of those games you are going to have to wait until later this afternoon to see if the Celtics are full go, just like yesterday. But if Halliburton is back in that lineup with Siakam, that 245 price here, or 242.5 as it's currently coming in at FanDuel, does make a lot of sense here to maybe look towards the, because we know the Pacers are going to push the tempo. And if you are the Indiana Pacers, what's the perfect scenario for you? A team that played yesterday, try to run them out of the building the very next night. So I actually like the points going to the over, even though the Celtics played yesterday, because I think from a Pacers perspective, it makes a lot of sense, which those points props you then start to turn towards Tatum and Brown, because obviously much more shots will be anticipated tonight with the Pacers in town. I don't know if I could take the points in this game or lay, because, again, we have to see who's actually playing in this game. The last thing you want to do, Ben, is like, hey, you know what? I'm going to take the Pacers. Halliburton needs at least one more game to get ready, as we've been hearing. He's actually only played 1 game in the middle, crunched in, since January the 8th. So how long is he even going to play, Ben, if he's in the starting lineup tonight? There's a lot of question marks around this one.
And the Pacers, who lost their first 3 games with Pascal Siakam in the lineup, have now won 3 straight, including 2 of those first 3 as an underdog outright. In both of those wins as a dog, the total went over. Against the Grizzlies in their most recent win 2 nights ago, total stayed under 228.5, but only by a few points. In fact, in the games without Tyrese Halliburton, he played on January 19th against the Portland Trailblazers. That game stayed under. But in the other games without Tyrese Halliburton, the Pacers were under in 7 of their last 8, entering the weekend against the Philadelphia 76ers. So when Halliburton is not there, the offense slows down just a tad for this Pacers team, who started scoring a ton and letting up a ton of offense on the other side. 14 of the first 15 games this year for Indiana hit the over. With Halliburton back, if he is fully healthy, I would lean to the over as well. Boston, by the way, has been booked as a favorite in all 13 home games this year, 13-10 against the spread. The Pacers 16-10-2 against the number as an underdog. Indiana and OKC, the only 2 teams left in the NBA that have a winning record outright, booked as an underdog, 15-13 straight up. That number as a dog for Indiana. The Sixers are an underdog tonight on the road in San Francisco, that as we speak of players needing to be available to match the 65-game minimum, this would almost indicate to me that if Golden State is a 3.5-point home favorite against Philadelphia, Joel Embiid is not expected to play tonight.
He's in the anticipated starting lineup, but again, in the NBA, that doesn't mean all that much, particularly with players who are struggling with injuries. It's basically going to be 50-50. Max will be in that lineup. Kelly Oubre, Tobias Harris will be in that lineup, but they were also in that lineup when they got beat by the Portland Trailblazers yesterday. This is a back-to-back for the Philadelphia 76ers, and you take a look at Golden State, who has a couple days of rest after that epic game against the Los Angeles Lakers. So if I'm just looking at that line, Golden State minus 3.5 here, I'm going to take Golden State. And you know what? Even if Joel Embiid comes back here, Ben, I'm still going to take Golden State here. Refreshed, the advantage for them will be at home. I think they'll have a better offensive game here. And also, I don't know what I'm getting out of Joel Embiid tonight and or if he plays. Early morning bet for me, Golden State Warriors.
Yeah. No points props available right now for anybody on Philadelphia. Golden State needs to start winning basketball games and doing so quickly. 43 games for Golden State, 19-24 the overall record, 5 games below 500. They trail both the Jazz and the Lakers by 2.5 games for what would be the 9 or the 10 spot in the play-in tournament in those Western Conference standings. We're past the midway point of this NBA regular season. Last year, the story for the Dubs, Donnie, great at home in San Francisco, abysmal on the road. This year, of course, under 500. They have not been great anywhere, but not even inside the Chase Center. 12-13 straight up at home this year. 6-13 against the spread as the home favored side. Philadelphia as an underdog, 5-5 ATS, but just 2 outright victories. The Jazz got blasted yesterday in Brooklyn. They lost by 33, 147-114. Second leg of a road back-to-back against the New York Knicks, who were victorious last night, Donnie, on the road in Charlotte. They won by 21, 113-92. The Knickerbockers, the hottest team in the NBA, they've won 7 straight. Tonight at home, they lay 4 points, 4.5 now the updated number against Utah, total 229. Can the Knicks make it 8 in a row?
I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna take the Utah Jazz in this. Donnie, how could you do that? Didn't you watch the Knicks win last night? The Jazz got blown out. Yes, but also, is this a true hard? Who's the harder back-to-back here? Utah played the Brooklyn Nets. They're still staying in the city limits here, maybe even in the same hotel. You had the Knicks go on the road last night, then come home. And also keep in mind, look, if you're going for an equal roster, obviously we know the Knicks roster is better when it's full go. Julius Randle, OG Anunoby, probably not going to play in this basketball game, which leaves Jalen Brunson as to be that sole guy who can turn up, but he played still in the 30s of minutes last night. You take a look at DiVincenzo, I believe played close to 39 or 42 minutes last night. Yeah. I think the Knicks might be a little bit more out of gas than the Jazz, even though from a team perspective, you're right. You expect the Knicks to win. They're playing good basketball, but sooner or later, having a couple guys out of your starting lineup, not playing on a back-to-back, or you in a different city last night, I'm going to take the Utah Jazz just based on the rest advantage I think they actually will have.
7-game win streak for New York, under in 6 of the 7. The Knickerbockers have won 13 of their last 15. The Knicks have gone under in 13 of their last 15. I'm going under 229 tonight. The Utah Jazz 19-16-1 against the number as a dog this year. Actually, the slight road favorite last night inside the Barclays Center against the Brooklyn Nets. The New York Knicks, 4th best cover percentage as a favorite, the best of any team that has been booked as a favorite 15 plus times. 19-9 ATS for Tom Thibodeau and his New York side when they have laid points this year. The Lakers lost last night at home, I believe it was. Was it at home, just to confirm? No, on the road in Houston. Yeah. 119-135. High-scoring game. LeBron took a little shot to the face from Dillon Brooks. Was none too pleased with that, and really, how could you fault him? The Lakers on a second leg of a road back-to-back in Atlanta. The Lakers booked as a 5-point dog against the Hawks, over-under 246.5. Again, if the Lakers are a 5-point underdog and you look at the available props at this moment and you only see Anthony Davis, maybe no LeBron James tonight in the ATL.
Yeah, these are the worst-case scenarios for the Lakers, Ben, that we talk about, where LeBron James plays 36 minutes last night and they get smashed, and it's a back-to-back, and you're expecting him to go out and play the next night. But again, you don't have the luxury of the Lakers being 15 games over 500, and you can take these games off. You take these games off, you're probably going to lose. And again, you didn't go out on the road and say, hey, man, we lost to Phoenix, man. What did you want to do? You know, KD's out there, Booker's going off, Beal. You lost to Houston. And then you got to fly to Atlanta tonight, and Atlanta is waiting for you because they're not on a back-to-back. Just give me the Atlanta Hawks in that rest environment here. This is a tough one for the Lakers, but you're right. Even if LeBron James does play, getting older there, can he play another 35-plus minutes tonight? I don't think so. Give me the Hawks.
The Lakers 24-24 and even 548 games. They sit in that tie for 9th or 10th right now in the Western Conference standings with Utah. There is very little margin of error if the Lakers don't want to have to do what they did a season ago, emerge out of the play-in tournament to make a playoff run, and that's all that matters for LA. Lakers outright money line against the worst cover team in the NBA, the Atlanta Hawks, who are 11-35 against the spread. 11-35. The Hawks are the only team in the NBA, Donnie, that cover in less than 35% of their games. It's a 23.9% cover percentage. That includes the Spurs and the Hornets and the Pistons. They are terrible. 11-35 against the number. Lakers win outright. Plus 164. The Bulls at home laying 6 against the Toronto Raptors. The over-under 227.5 for a couple of teams middling in the Eastern Conference. What's the result on Madison Avenue tonight in Chicago?
Yeah, the result is I'm just going to take the points here with Toronto. Finally, a game we're talking about, Ben, with that maybe one or two teams coming off of a back-to-back. That's not the case. They both should be rested. I don't know about the 227.5 or 226.5 in that range.
Yeah.
Just give me the points with the Raptors.
Listen, that's on me for any of our Chicago listeners out there, and I love the city of Chicago. I said Madison Avenue. We're in New York City. Madison Street, the Madhouse on Madison inside the United Center. That's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to live with. College basketball up next. This is only very late January with John Rothstein next on the Early Line.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev. Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
Right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I don't
favorite.
care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Chargers have the 5th pick in the National Football League draft. There's a lot of different like roads that they could take with this pick. And for the record as well, there's a few sports books out there already that already have next year's Super Bowl numbers up. The Chargers are like 30-1. So there's a lot of work to do.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid.
He feels like he's got unfinished business, right? He won the national championship, did what he said he wanted to do going back to Ann Arbor.
And, he coached, I think, with the Raiders as an assistant and then got the job with the Niners and then went to title games, went to Super Bowls, lost to his brother. And I think you're right, unfinished business, go back, try to win a Super Bowl.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the RAC. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit, going like, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place I promise you, then Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
There are 2 more days left in the month of January. February is the shortest month on the calendar despite a leap year here in 2024. That means March is on the horizon. So this is only January, but it's late January on this Tuesday on the early line on SportsGrid. I am Ben. Donnie is on the right side. And John Rothstein joins us now as the man in the middle, of course, of CBS Sports, and joining us on behalf of the FanDuel Sportsbook. John, are you ready to say, in just about 48 hours, this is only February?
To quote Sean Astin in Rudy, I've been ready for this my whole life.
Yeah, I know you have been. So, John, it's a monumental week in college basketball. We're into the deep part of conference action. We are less than 2 months away from Selection Sunday. Again, on Thursday, it is February, and there is a marquee slate this weekend that we'll talk about in just a little bit. But before we get there, some early action on Big Monday in Austin. 4th-ranked Houston wins by 4 on the road in overtime, 76-72. Texas does cover slightly as a 4.5-point home underdog, but any win on the road in conference play, especially the Big 12, is significant. John, what does it say about Kelvin Sampson's Cougs that they have won their last 2 Big 12 road contests?
Well, I think it says that Houston right now is unequivocally the favorite to win the Big 12 regular season title, something that myself or not a lot of other people would have said at the start of the season because of the respect that Bill Self has earned during his tenure at Kansas. Ben, you know as well as I do, at least a share of the Big 12 regular season title in 17 of the last 19 seasons. But this is a flawed Kansas team. This is a Kansas team that has gotten a combined 1 made field goal off the bench in its last 2 games. And Bill Self is a Hall of Fame head coach, but unless he can manufacture some sort of a bench, I don't think that Kansas is just not going to win the Big 12 regular season title. I'm not so sure that Kansas is going to see the second weekend of the NCAA tournament.
Ooh. John, if we focus on the Big 12 here, which by far is my favorite conference in college basketball, Houston coming over from the ACC. Talk about their championship prospects. Is it a detriment because they're going to have to expend so much energy in the regular season, or do you view it as a competitive advantage, saying they'll really be ready this year for March Madness?
Houston did not need the Big 12 to be a Final Four caliber program. Houston did not need the Big 12 to be a high seed in the NCAA tournament. But Houston does need the Big 12 to make it more prepared for the NCAA tournament. And I think without question that Kelvin Sampson's team will be more equipped to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament because of the calluses that it's going to endure from January 1 to Selection Sunday. And you saw it last night. I think there's been Houston teams that have had more overall talent. When you think about the team, obviously they went to the Final Four with Quentin Grimes and so on and so forth. But I look at this team as being a mirror image of its head coach, one whose offense might at times be a missed shot. Ben, you saw last night 15 offensive rebounds. And just like the great John Kreese said in The Karate Kid circa 1984, no mercy.
Houston, a Final Four team in 2021, an Elite 8 squad in 2022, and now a minus 140 favorite to win the Big 12 regular season title. We'll talk about that conference in just a moment. Duke on the road, 7th-ranked Duke against Virginia Tech last night. A double-digit victory for John Shire's Blue Devils, 77-67. The Dukies cover as a 3.5-point road favorite against the Hokies. John, as you look at Duke in the scope of the ACC, what is the ceiling for this Blue Devils team in year number 2 under Shire?
Well, the ceiling is obviously to contend for an ACC regular season title. Duke and North Carolina are clearly the 2 best teams in the conference, and then be in a position to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. But the big picture here for me, when you look at the ACC, is just how many teams are going to make the NCAA tournament out of this conference. Now, in the last 2 NCAA tournaments, the ACC has only had 5 teams reach the field each year. Now, with that said, the ACC has had tremendous success in the NCAA tournament. 2 teams from the ACC made the Final Four in 2022, and 1, Miami, made it last year. But, Ben, as of yesterday, the ACC only had 3 teams in the top 45 of the net. It did have 6 teams in the top 50. But with that said, Clemson, in my opinion, missed this opportunity to some NCAA tournament berth when it lost on Saturday to Duke. Now, the Tigers still have wins on their resume on a neutral site against TCU, in a home game against South Carolina, and in a road game against Alabama. Those aren't going away. But with that said, after an 11-1 start, Clemson has struggled a little bit. And if Clemson does struggle, I'm not so sure I see any team in the ACC other than Duke or North Carolina looking like a surefire at-large team as we have this conversation right now on the heels of February.
It's pretty crazy as it turns out like that. One of the preeminent, the best conferences over the past 30 to 40 years has always been the ACC, with multiple teams guaranteed getting into the tournament. We'll see if that changes up. But teams that are looking in the ACC to win 11 straight games, that's your North Carolina Tar Heels, number 3 in the country, battling Georgia Tech. A perfect 9-0 in the ACC, looking for a 10-0 tonight against Georgia Tech. Give us some options then on what we can look forward to, John.
Well, I think we need to continue to monitor the prospects of Elliot Cadeau and his emergence for North Carolina alongside R.J. Davis in the North Carolina backcourt. Elliot Cadeau, to me, is the key to North Carolina reaching a Final Four. We know that R.J. Davis right now has separated himself as unequivocally the best guard in college basketball. Armando Bacot's a walking double-double. You have great tenacity at the 4 defensively with Stanford transfer Harrison Ingram. But Elliot Cadeau is the guy that has to take his game consistently to another level for North Carolina. But I got to tell you guys, and I think, again, I don't want to diminish what the Tar Heels have done, but when I go back to what I just referenced about the ACC's uncertainty beyond the top 2 or 3 teams, you also have to look at the way things are going to shape out in terms of the opportunities these bubble teams are going to have. As I referenced yesterday, we saw 6 teams in the top 50 of the net for the ACC. That means that only 40% of the league is in the top 50 of the net. And I looked it up as of yesterday. 8 teams, I believe, were in the top 75. That means if you are a bubble team, only half approximately of the road games you're going to play in the ACC are going to be quad 1 caliber opportunities. So not only is there limited options to pick up big wins that move the needle, there's also more options, or close to as many options, of picking up costly losses. Let's look at the Big East right now. Yesterday, we saw the Big East had 8 teams out of their 11 ranked in the top 53 of the net. And, Ben, that doesn't include Seton Hall, who already has 4 quad 1 wins and has played the last 2 games without Kadari Richmond, the Big East Player of the Year favorite, before he went out of the lineup due to an undisclosed reason. And now we're seeing the Big East have 9 of its 11 teams, Ben, in position to be in position.
And that's a huge thing for the Big East. That's a huge thing for any league right now.
Yes.
Those quad 1 opportunities to build up the resume as we creep closer and closer to Selection Sunday. UNC knows what it's like to win on the road. One of 2 power conference teams around the country with at least 5 road victories this year, Carolina and Creighton. A 10-game win streak for UNC, covering in 9 of the 10. Another great game in SEC action on this Tuesday evening in Rocky Top. Tennessee, a 14.5-point favorite against South Carolina, who we saw at home a few weeks ago pull off the upset over Kentucky. This one for Paris Lamont and company on the road, John, in Knoxville. Is this game going to be more competitive than that 14.5-point spread says?
Well, I talked to Lamont Paris yesterday on my podcast, the College Hoops Today podcast, the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. And he really went into detail about how he has modeled how he's built South Carolina's program after a lot of the skills that he crafted under Bo Ryan at Wisconsin as an assistant coach. And when you watch South Carolina play, a lot of the same principles resonate. Low turnovers, low fouls, and also a tremendous ability to evaluate, because you know you're not going to be able to get the best players as other blue blood programs in college basketball. But the one thing we have to continue to keep an eye on is the dynamic that Dalton Connect is providing for Rick Barnes. Because let's face it, we have seen Tennessee over the last 6 seasons average 24 wins per year under Barnes, but they have often lacked offense in the NCAA tournament that's allowed them to be propelled to deep into the bracket. This year, they have somebody, Ben, who I'm calling a canteen in the desert, and that's Dalton Connect. In his last 5 games, he's averaging 32 points per game. A year ago, he was at Northern Colorado, but he is the reason and the primary reason why Tennessee fans should have hope and a palpable confidence that they have a real chance to get to a Final Four.
Getting down to the Big 12 here, big matchup, 2 top 25 teams. It's Texas Tech and it's TCU. Here's the interesting part. You might be thinking Kansas has the best record in the Big 12, maybe Baylor, maybe even taking a look at Houston. That's not the case. It's Texas Tech at 5-1. TCU coming in 4-3 in Big 12 play. But here's always my favorite caveat. TCU at home favored by 5.5 points. It's hard to win on the road, particularly in the Big 12. What are we looking at tonight between Texas Tech and TCU, John?
Hard, tough, and ugly. That's the best way to describe what we're going to see in this game between Grant McCasland and Jamie Dixon. And, you know, I wrote this today, Ben, in my daily column. It's been very, obviously, I think, under the radar. But Grant McCasland, in his time now at Texas Tech, North Texas, and Arkansas State, throughout his head coaching career in Division I, has won just under 75% of his games as a head coach. He has won wherever he's been, and he's doing it this year, guys, at Texas Tech, without Devin Cambridge, who was projected to be this team's starting power forward, but he was lost for the year with a knee injury. Remember, Devin Cambridge was a starter on the Arizona State team last year that made the NCAA tournament, won a game in the first 4, and lost a close game to TCU in the round of 64. So Grant McCasland has been a terrific hire at Texas Tech. And this is, again, another program maximizing the COVID senior. You look, obviously, at Texas Tech, and obviously a lot of people from the periphery are going to talk about Pop Isaacs and the breakout season he's having, averaging about 17 points a game. But also the ability of Texas Tech to go into the portal and get somebody like Warren Washington, who's a 5th-year anchor up front, like Joe Toussaint, who for the majority of his career at Iowa and West Virginia was a capable role player, but has now taken another step as a 5th-year senior. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you are a head coach, you need to recruit COVID seniors with the same fervor as you recruit a 4 or 5-star prospect. I just named 2 on Texas Tech, and I was just naming another one a couple of minutes ago, Dalton Connect, who has Tennessee in position the Final Four for the first time under Rick Barnes.
The Red Raiders, a 5-1 Big 12 record, best in the conference. 2 of those 5 wins outright as an underdog. My apologies to Lamont Paris, by the way. I switched up his last name and his first name. John, we have 40 seconds left in this segment. A showdown tonight in Columbus, a Big 10 battle. Illinois, a 2.5-point road favorite. Give us the 30-second breakdown.
Ohio State is a combined 29-26 in the last 2 years under Chris Holtmann, and the Buckeyes are at a crossroads. Was down at one point on Saturday by 35 to Northwestern, and it's now or never. I quote Tim Robbins as Andy Dufresne in The Shawshank Redemption circa 1994. And Chris Holtmann, this message is to you. Get busy living or get busy dying.
Oof. It's a big one tonight between the Buckeyes and the Illini. John Rothstein, we thank you for your time. We give you a best bet up next.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev. Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
Right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Chargers have the 5th pick in the National Football League draft. There's a lot of different like roads that they could take with this pick. And for the record as well, there's a few sports books out there already that already have next year's Super Bowl numbers up. The Chargers are like 30-1. So there's a lot of work to do.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
He feels like he's got unfinished business, right? He won the national championship, did what he said he wanted to do, going back to Ann Arbor.
And, he coached, I think, with the Raiders as an assistant, and then got the job with the Niners, and then went to title games, went to Super Bowls, lost to his brother. And I think you're right, unfinished business, go back, try to win a Super Bowl.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the RAC. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit, going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We give you a best bet as we round out our 3 hours together live right here on the Early Line on SportsGrid on this Tuesday. It's Ben, it's Donnie, and it's the SportsGrid app. The ultimate sports betting companion app is always there for you. Available for download at both the Apple and the Play Store. You can scan that QR code right there on your screen in this moment. Included in the SportsGrid app, 5-star plays. Those are known as best bets. So are these. Before we say farewell and before we say goodbye, it is time for bye, bye, bye. DRS on this Tuesday evening. What gets your attention for a best bet?
Big 12 basketball. I'm headed out. Rock, Chalk, Jayhawk, Allen Fieldhouse. We're going to go with a team total over on Kansas at 80.5 points. Now, hear me out on this one. You take a look at efficiency,
Please.
Kansas has that. But also, from a defensive perspective, Oklahoma State, the worst, the 14th rated team here in the Big 12. Now, where does the matchup come in handy here? Take a look at inside the three-point arc. 57% is in conference play what Kansas does shoot, going up against the worst team at defending inside the arc, Oklahoma State. Also, if you take a look at, who squeezes the three-point line? It's Oklahoma State. Who doesn't care about the three-point line? It's Kansas here. And take a look at this. Final one. 2-point distribution here. Number one, 60% of the points come from Kansas inside the paint. How about this on the opposite side? Worst team at defending inside the arc. That is Oklahoma State. Wrap tonight. Kansas gets into the 80s.
I'm telling you right now, when Donnie Rightside gives you a college basketball team total, that man is locked in. I love the look. I could also highlight a team total for Michigan State over 78.5, but I'm just going to focus on Michigan State winning the basketball game and covering as an 11.5 point favorite. It is Tom Izzo's 69th birthday tonight as the Spartans get ready to host their in-state rival, the Michigan Wolverines, who are atrocious. 6 games below 500, 7-3, 2-7 in the Big Ten, 0-3 against the number as an underdog in Big Ten play. Win number 700 for Izzo tonight. They cover as well. We'll talk to you tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern, here on the Early Line.